Being a skeptic in times of horror, war, and death, what is it to be a skeptic? It is to hold in your head that something might be true or false if you do not have evidence, tests, a valid and sound argument for it. It is not to doubt, although doubt can play a role. Doubt in and of itself should not be the default position. Rather, unknowing, uncertainty should be the default position. We must be very careful as humans because we are pattern seeking creatures and we will create a story where there is no story to be created, especially during times of tragedy when horror, war, and death seem to be around every turn. It is all too easy to create a narrative that makes those things into illusion or conspiracy. It did not take long after the events of 9/11 for there to be a quote documentary end quote that quote exposed end quote the inside job of 9/11, which wasn't an inside job, but the so-called documentary Loose Change did all these bad arguments to try to prove a conspiracy. Popular Mechanics debunked the bleep out of them. Now, people are pretty cynical these days, which is not the same as being a skeptic. Here's some sad examples that I will look at. These are hard to look at because what's going on with Israel and Hamas is a terrible situation. Whatever is happening, whoever is fighting and killing and or being killed, it's just tragic. And I don't know why we humans can't get along with each other. So this one post is complaining about all these withdrawals of stories by saying that they're lies. These things were withdrawn after they were talked about. There was 40 babies beheaded, and then this was later denied to have been said at all. There was Ben Shapiro generated shared an image of an AI generated burnt baby. Well, I'll get into that more in a bit. And other things that they're claiming is happening to paint the one side as the bad guys is actually a lie by the other side. And of course, you're going to have people support Hamas, and you're going to have support on Israel, and you're going to have those that try to say, well, I'm in support of neither. And our emotions compel us to choose a side, and our emotions compel us to pick a team, and our emotions compel us to create narrative where there is no narrative. The Ben Shapiro image that he shared on X, was it real or fake? Well, there was a post that he put out, and it was first shared by the Israeli Prime Minister. So that's the source of it. Now, How did the prime minister get it? Who was it from? These are questions that are not ones that shouldn't be asked, but I'm in no position to ask them. I don't know the prime minister. Somebody somewhere could find out these things, and perhaps the information is available. But that's not the point. The point is, we're going to suspect that this isn't real because it's terrible and horrible. And so it's easier to believe that it's not real than it is to believe that it's real. He posted this image, and people said that it was AI generated and that they proved that, quote unquote, by using a website that checks to see if a image is AI generated. Later on, other people showed that it's very easy with Photoshop to make a fake image, and they put a puppy here in place of the charred remains. They said videos are harder to fake, but they'll never show a video of proof. But of course, that's easily dismantled because if they had a video, you could just say the video was faked. And sure, it's hard to make it, but so what? Hollywood is helping them. Because if you want to believe that it's fake, you will find a way to call it fake, even if it's not fake. So is it fake or not? Well, if you go to the website, sometimes it tells you it's fake, sometimes it tells you it's human, sometimes it can't detect whether or not an actual image is human or fake. So perhaps using a website to determine the truth isn't good enough. But in and of itself, is being skeptical that X happened the wrong thing to do in times of war, horror, and death? It is appropriate to temper our emotions with reason and logic, and that includes going to the other extreme where we assume that everything that we're seeing is fake, because that also can construct a narrative in our brain. People are actually dying if there is a war being fought. And I wouldn't be surprised if people are saying that the war itself is also fake for whatever reason. So, is now the time to be skeptical and ask critical questions, or can that wait? I don't have the answer per se, but I do say that you have to temper your emotions with logic and reason. That you might think, well, this image, I mean, it doesn't look like this. Well, then that's it. That's where that should end. It's like you shouldn't keep going on that narrative thread because you will then come to a belief rather than hold it in question. Where did it come from? Who posted it first? How did they come to get that? But are you in position to find those answers? And if not, perhaps it's best left up to those who have the ability to find the answers. And you'll just have to trust that they will get around to it. The news acts on impulse first, retracts later. So it shouldn't be a surprise that news stories are coming out where they're saying this or that happened and then later withdrawing those things. And perhaps to save face, they're saying, oh, no, we never said that, which they shouldn't lie. But it's understandable that they might want to save face by saying that they never said such a thing. I don't think that they should lie, but regardless. And if you can demonstrate that X, Y, or Z government did lie to when they withdraw the story and then lied about ever telling that story, and well, that doesn't mean anything other than that they're ashamed that they reported something that wasn't true. There's not more to it. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's something sinister going on. Someone somewhere made an error. But we pick sides. They're the bad guys. These people are the good guys. I don't have information. I don't know anything other than what I read or see or hear. But a good skeptic, or, well, I suppose a mediocre or bad skeptic, should be able to analyze all available information and see if there is a trend one way or the other. All the information available seems to indicate that terrible attacks have happened on a particular people by a different group of people. Now, did they have some reason to do so? I don't know. But the attack seems to be one of a brutal nature, attacking innocents rather than military targets. That's something that's a war crime. We, as a society of a world, have agreed that certain things shouldn't be done during war, and so if you do those things, then that makes you the bad guy by default. So, yes, there is things that aren't real out there. There are stories that later on the news retracts, but sometimes those retractions are hidden and small rather than being on the front page. The news should be more careful with how it presents information. And you, as a individual looking at all of these terrible things going on, must temper yourself to not assume that it must be real or it must be fake or it must be X, Y, and Z because I don't trust them. Well, you might not trust them, but that has no relevance on whether it's true or not. Your trust is not a coherent part of an argumentation. We have the photos, videos, etc. What more do you want? And then you have to ask, well, if you were presented with the things that you were asking for, would that really satisfy you? Or would it be that, no, you want to believe that it's not true? It's difficult. I don't like what's going on. I hate what's going on. I hate that we humans cannot figure out a way to use peace, because I think peace works. Sadly, there are those who only want pieces of us rather than peace with us. And the only thing that can be done with those individuals is to stop them and either imprison them or end them because they do not want to listen to reason. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to listen to reason? While you're busy questioning if this or that is real, are you perhaps in some way taking away from the reality of what is going on? Perhaps X is untrue, but there's still a war happening. So maybe now is not the time to question it. Well, how long do we wait until we start asking questions? Decent question to ask, and I don't necessarily know the answer to that either. I saw the video of the prop driven parachute people going into a city and shooting. Rather just messed up, evil, nasty way to go about war. Attack some random village that has nothing to do with anything, has no connection to the leaders of the country. Meanwhile, news outlets, of course, are going into, well, can't believe how Israel failed its intelligence operations, and then people say, aha! It must have been an inside job because they knew this attack was coming and they deliberately pulled back. As if no one can ever screw anything up in the government just because they screw stuff up. So simultaneously, the government is a colossally huge, ginormous bed of conspiratorial ideas, but also they can't possibly screw up when it comes to successfully launching an attack on themselves, and that wouldn't come to light, but also they're incompetent enough to not make it less obvious or what. It just doesn't make sense. You're trying to have it both ways. Yeah, the government's competent enough to do the attack, but incompetent enough to not cover it up decently so it looks real because we found the chink in the army. Because no way would a government ever fail to plan for something. And this one person was like, yeah, but they just had recently withdrawn. Yeah, maybe they got overconfident. That happens. Hey, look, we set up this great security system. We know what's going on. We don't need that many troops now. Let's withdraw a bit. And then the enemy says, hey, look, those nitwits are finally let their guard down. Now's the time to attack. Duh. But when you construct that narrative in your head, well, it has to be this when you have no proof of that. That's not being a skeptic. That is constructing a story. Why? Because a story is compelling. The truth can be boring to some. It's boring to some that we evolved from lesser species, or, well, different species at any rate, that we have this chain to get to us. That's not good enough for some. It's more interesting to pretend that we were just magicked into existence as is today. It's just humans popped into existence fully formed magically and started having kids and populated the world. That's an interesting story. The other one's kind of boring to some people. So, that a government can fail on its intelligence gathering and its protection of its own self is kind of a boring story. So, oh, it's an inside deal. Yeah, they're doing this And I even read one person say, no. Actually, they're doing this to get the other people to attack them, knowing that they would attack them, so that they could then declare war. What? What kind of convoluted thing is that? Like, we know that they're gonna attack us as soon as we let our guard down, so we're gonna let our guard down. Oh, look, they attacked us. Now we get to go to war with them. What? Why would you? What kind of sense does that make? And it doesn't. That's the point. To be a skeptic is to hold the idea as maybe it's true, maybe it's false, but I'm going to try to get as much information as I can, critically and analytically, and I'm going to do the hard, difficult data research before I say anything on the matter. And if I don't have proof or evidence to offer, then I'm going to remain silent. Can you support one side or the other? You can. Your support, if it's just words, may or may not matter that much in the long run. Financial support, I suspect, would have a slightly bigger impact, but I have no idea how you would send that sort of aid to either side, or even if you could. Well, but clearly that side is wrong and the other side is right. How dare you suggest that somebody send. Well, there's going to be people that want to help both sides, and I recognize that. Well, but they're the bad people because they're on the bad people's side. Or maybe there's just misinformed people that are on the side that has committed the acts of horrible attacks against humans, war crimes, or terrorism, or whatever the label is that we're applying. And the people perhaps have been convinced by the stories that others are producing, these narratives that people are producing to explain the story in a more interesting way than the reality that is just too brutal to comprehend. So then, if you feel that you should post something on X or Facebook or YouTube or whatever, use reason and logic to temper that. Do the research, dig in for the data, look for the facts, and if at the end of the day you realize, hey, you know what? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I just don't have access to all the information. It's going to take time to get access to that information. There's ways to request for information and the Freedom of Information Acts and things like this, but whether that implies internationally or not, who knows? But if you find yourself too impatient to do that, because you need to act, you need to do something. I feel that. I want to do something too. I don't want these people to die. Stop attacking each other. I want to go over with I don't know, a giant cake and be like, hey, everyone, look, cake. Everyone loves cake, right? I don't know. I've got like different types of cake, and if you're not into sugar, I have this cake that has no sugar. You don't like cake? Well, I've got this different meals to offer, because I want us to come together and be at peace and sit down and talk. And I'd probably just get blasted for my efforts. I'd get shot on sight before I even got to open my mouth about the food that I brought. But I desire there to be peace and love and not hate and violence and killing of innocents and burning and torture and death and not letting people out of the city, and just all this insanity that's going on. I just don't like that. But there's nothing I can do. All I can do, and perhaps all that we can do, broadly speaking, is to use reason and logic to guard ourselves from the storytelling that is inherent within us, and to not allow ourselves to construct a narrative without empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a valid and sound argument. Because if you don't have those, remain skeptical. And that might mean remaining silent, broadly speaking. So, what is this war about? I've read many articles on that. I don't know that that matters too much what it's about or how it started or why or any of that, because it's still war. I don't like war. I don't like killing and death. I don't like bloodshed. And I don't understand why we humans do this to each other. Is it religion? Might be. Could be. Probably is. Why are things always happening in Israel? Well, because 3 different tribes of people all view this one tiny speck of dirt as sacred and holy. God gave that to them, and it belongs to them. The other people have it right now, and I don't like that. And we're going to kill each other over some dirt. Because that dirt, that's magical dirt, where our magical temple belongs. So we can pray to our magical deity in our magical way. Can't you just build it somewhere else? No, that's where God told us to build it. Oh, their God also told them to build it there. How inconvenient. Just a bit of dirt. It's not special. If you dug a hole deep enough, you would just get to lava. Is that lava special? Is that location on Earth somehow magically different than the rest of the locations on Earth? No. It's just a bit of land. Your holy land can be anywhere. And perhaps we need to be more flexible in these beliefs that we have. But we're not. Maybe until we figure that out, we're going to keep hurting and killing each other over it. And that's pretty sad. I don't know if I can be a good skeptic in times of horror, war, and death. Hopefully, all of you will help me to do so. In the meantime, let's love each other and work towards greater understanding of each other's ideas, beliefs, stances on issues, and try to build each other up rather than tear each other down. Peace works. Let's use it. Thanks for listening.